Do it, bitch. Oh, hello. Hey, good morning, everybody. It's the first ever Kerfuffle podcast on a Friday. What about that? We've broken another record.
That's my commitment. Wow. You've killed your consistency there, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's your fault. It's your fault. You've got charitable things. You've got parenting duties at the weekend. So we've changed all the rules round, and now the millions of listeners and watchers aren't going to be able to find us, Kristian. So thanks for that. So if you're watching this on Sunday, it's a replay, so don't bother commenting, and that's all on you, Kristian. So thanks for breaking the magic.
You have my unreserved apologies, Whaley.
But we're here for a good reason, so I'm going to forgive you. Quite the fact that you're a lovely, lovely character anyway. We'll come on to that, but I do need to do pleasantries. Good morning, Mincy.
Good morning, Whaley. I'm so pleased to be here with both of you because, as you know, charity runs thick through my veins.
You said that so passively aggressive. It was like we're in a civil partnership.
Yeah,
it's been a big week for charities all over. I'm really pleased to have Kristian Stott join us today. He is, we need to give him some sort of background. I have interviewed in my time at Kerfuffle well over, we calculated it the other day, and I think it's somewhere well over 300 interviews I've conducted. And I've done 4 with this gentleman here, and each one of them has
been absolutely catastrophic, hasn't it?
It's been awful. It's the only interview subject that I didn't really manage to get round. So I'm going to have another go today.
Brilliant. Can't wait. That's a
gauntlet. Like Frost Nixon, this isn't it, Stotty? Frost Nixon, you and Mincy.
Well, Stotty, we normally give people their, an introduction, but I'm going to let you do it because today you are the star of Watkins' statistics show that he launches on a Friday. So that's out there. That's in the property industry eye this morning. So you're already famous, but for people who are not,
I've become a confluence cape of content. That's just.
This is a big day for you.
What
today.
A position to be in, hey?
All your chickens are coming home to roost at once. But can you tell the industry who are listening, all 3 of them, who is the man behind that really lovely cabinet you've got there in the background?
Do I need to say this 3 different ways, or I don't? What am I supposed to say to that? You know me.
I know you. I'm just asking you to introduce yourself. How would you introduce yourself? If this was a BNI mixer, how would you introduce?
He hasn't read his notes. He doesn't know who you are. He's seen you on here before. He's forgotten, and he's just been really, really lazy in doing that interviewer's lazy question. Tell me about yourself. So tell us about yourself.
Good morning, David and Simon. I'm Kristian.
Lovely to have you with us.
Great.
I've been around and about since I had a fringe.
Round and about. Brilliant.
Which is a long time ago now. And I've enjoyed, very fortunately, not necessarily both sides of the industry, but working in agency and in the agency supply network. And I have enjoyed both, not necessarily with equal measure. And I now work in, I suppose, complementary technology, in automation, AI, robotics, and machine learning. Is that enough about me? I like reading swimming inside.
But we'll come on to this in a second because I think this is relevant. You do have some. You mentioned you couldn't do the podcast on a Sunday morning, and that's because you do have some keen personal interests in rugby, in sports, in coaching. You're very involved, are you not?
I am, yeah. And I don't know. Can it possibly be sometimes a hollow boast? But I think that
don't worry about that. That's pretty much what the whole show is.
Oh, excellent. Sorry, I misread my notes. I do quite a bit of that. And do you know what, David? I quite enjoy. I read your beautifully written. There wasn't an ounce of AI in it article about giving back.
Yes.
And I think we all do that in a variety of different ways, or many of us do that in a variety of different ways. And I certainly enjoy that side of things. I think it's very nourishing, even if it does mean you've got to get up early and often lose your voice on a Saturday or Sunday morning.
I'm breaking through this positivity. Let's take it back to the negative. Good. And let's take it back where we first met, where you put me through hellish 2 years at the agency previously, where you made me jump through every single hoop before signing on the dotted line at, as far as I remember, massively reduced rates because I didn't know what I was talking about.
You told me that was our little secret.
Yeah,
I've never told anybody that, Whaley. Do you know, I still remember our first meeting where you very politely introduced yourself as the sales director. And then actually, I think I've just stolen one of your lines, haven't I? Because you were the one that said to me, and me being the sales director is something of a hollow boast because there aren't any salespeople but me.
I've always been good at self-deprecation because I have to be.
Yeah, and you kind of ran out of road when you told us that as part of the onboarding, we'd be handed over into the capable hands of insert Cliff here. He wasn't even called Cliff.
Also, you've told me many times that you where you fell in love was where my pitch was. I don't even think we're that good, but we're the least shit. Just to be absolutely clear as well. That was a many moons ago. Not the Leviathan they are these days. They're brill.
And yet, they say that there's so much success embedded in consistency, Whaley. So
I'm consistently inconsistent, so that's where I step up to the claim. So,
do you know how long ago that was? Have you actually quit? I think it was 17 years.
Wow.
Oh no,
I was doing that. I was doing that when I was 11. That's amazing.
Yeah, I was only 6.
Yeah.
I think
that takes us into different territory. Let's move away from that whole YouTube.
Stotty, for those of us that don't like statistics or Christopher Watkin or reading articles in Property Industry Eye, could you summarize what the market is doing this week based on your recording with him? Give us a flavour for what you think's happening out there.
I love this, Mincy. So what we're doing is we're essentially acting as a succubus, a parasite on Chris's show, and nicking it for our own. That's great. Well done.
Yeah.
Fine. The market is crashing catastrophically. Prices have dropped 68.45% in the last 4 minutes.
Come on, Charlie. Charlie
Landon walked in the room.
I think the market's holding up pretty well. The numbers are going up in terms of volume. And I think the only thing that perhaps came out is a little bit of price sensitivity from buyers. Not that I would call that catalytic, but that it's evident, in terms of rising numbers of sales agreed. Prices seem to be climbing, but also the number of price changes or adjustments, as they're more politely known. Does appear
if you were an agent, today, then out there in the living room trying to sort of win instruction.
But if
you were, that conversation I've heard from agents on the ground right now is very difficult because the vendor's expectation is actually still quite high. They're still not the reality of things has not hit home. Now we're not selling negativity to them. We want to remain positive, but how do you have a conversation with somebody based on more realistic?
The number 42, isn't it? I think it's the same answer that's always been the answer, and that's since probably 1971 when this shit was invented. Sorry, we're allowed words like invented on here. And I think there is a sort of a general rule of thumb, which is don't talk rubbish, bang straight. And I think that's the gap oftentimes is there's either a fear of talking straight or, and you can talk straight with structure. It doesn't have to be dictatorial and almost sort of Victorian dad. I think you can advise and coach around what the marketplace is doing. And I think, David, you're much better at this than I will ever imagine being. There is a point at which you walk away. And the point at which you say, I'm sorry, this isn't the kind of work I do. Because if you end up with, and we talked about the numbers, the volume in the industry rising. One element of that is listings. And too many listings is a bad thing because you've then got a lack of competitivity from buyers. They've got more choice, more options, etc. And I think that, sticking stuff on the wall or in the window, if you've still got one, that is overpriced with an undermotivated vendor who's committed to that value point rather than what the market expectation will be. Well, this is a Bob Scarfism, nothing to do with me, but stock on the wall is a liability. It's an asset when it's SSTC. Mm-hmm. I think that that, if you go out and win listings that are overvalued in a market with price sensitivity.
I think, you know what, over the years, that's the one, because it's not easily quantifiable, i.e. what it costs you to market a property that doesn't sell, as opposed to we all know what a property that does sell brings you in, but agents need to be aware of that cost of just listing for listing's sake, because they're paying for it, aren't they?
You know what, though? Do pubs adequately measure ullage? It's a very difficult one, because I think if you start at opportunity value, i.e. total number of instructions multiplied by fee, you get that 100% view of what you could achieve. And then you've always got to depreciate that, because there's always going to be a slip twixt cup and lip. It's unavoidable. But I think that, if you say, well, I've got a withdrawal rate, 20, 25%, I've got a sales cancellation rate, 25, 35%, whatever those numbers are, it's idiosyncratic on a per agent basis, isn't it? But I think when you look at those, you have to sort of question, if you're filling cars with diesel, fixed costs of payroll, maybe fixed and variable costs around marketing, et cetera, depending how you describe marketing. All of a sudden, it's pretty easy to see that opportunity value depreciated by ullage or loss, whatever is the best description in the industry, equals an amount of money. Now, if that amount of money puts you in a Bentley, then fair enough. Works, doesn't it? Decent business. You could lose 75% of all your new instructions, and if it still puts you in a Bentley, job done. But I think if you're in a position where, from a sort of cash flow P&L perspective, you're doing all this work and every year it doesn't feel like it's been worth it, then that ullage point is in the danger zone, isn't it? You're paying customers to mess you around. And interestingly, when I first experienced this industry, there were withdrawal fees and pre-agreed marketing costs up front. People would be paying. Obviously, brochures back then were litho. Well, if you were lucky, they were litho, or they were running up to Boots with a film and coming back with some Brit stick and a picture. But if you were doing litho brochures, people would pay 1,000, 1,200 quid up front to have 3 or 4 boxes of litho brochures done, and there would be a 28-day notice with a withdrawal fee, £800,000, something like that. Those have just seemed to be gone. The industry now. I mean, I'm sure some people have got a little tickle in their agreement somewhere, but generally, all of that
it's all at risk.
Yeah, and it's almost sort of factored in that the fixed costs are stuffed into the eventual input, the eventual revenue.
And Stotty, do you think those days are they're just from yesteryear, or can you ever get back to anything like that?
Do you know, it's a difficult one, and you've always got to, whether you're talking about sort of anything really, portal exposure, marketing fees, you've always got to bring in that sort of Judas principle that I think, the whole town, although the whole town is not allowed to meet in a pub and agree to have high fees, because I remember they got in trouble for that, didn't they? But if a whole area decided that better fees was better for business, it only takes one of the bunch to go and drop those down, and everybody else is then in that race to the bottom. You get dragged
I think over the past couple of weeks, there's been a sort of a debate semi-raging on social media. And it's a lot of it's led by the property markites, who I've never heard of them, but their belief,
right for them, I believe. Anyway, carry on.
Right, just the charitable art. Their belief is that regulation, and I think Simon Ledbetter also said this when he was on with us the other day. The part of the issue that we have within the industry as a whole, in terms of getting the members of the public to take us seriously and to pay us the fees that we deserve, are all linked to the fact that there is a very low bar for entry at the moment. Anyone can do this, even Whaley. God,
I've often thought about.
God help us. Whaley could open up
an
agency tomorrow, but if we had regulation,
I don't think I agree.
Just to add some context on that, Kristian, before you go, I've got it here in front of me. Actually, Simon's brilliant Simon Ledbetter's brilliant Voice of the Agent survey. And he asked the question amongst many, which you should get access from him if you can. Do you believe all estate letting agents should have formal qualifications and be regulated to provide minimum standards? And it was a massive survey, and it was 94%, wasn't it? 94% said that. I think that's an open goal.
In agency, we insisted on qualification across the board and be paid for it. We had a clause on it that said, if we paid for you to become qualified and you left within a period of time, then you had to, I think it was repaying 50%. I can't remember what it was, but we absolutely insisted on it because we felt it. We were an ISO quality governed business anyway, 9001. So for us, it was an important factor, but that wasn't the point, I suppose. The point was, will it lift fees? And I'm not convinced that it will. And in the same way as, what we're seeing going on in FMCG at the moment with the Aldis and the Lidls, the truth is some people operate in that, I guess, and I'm not trying to belittle anything here, but the amount of money in is governed by the amount of hours available. And others operate at scale. And the capacity to deliver efficiency through scale is entirely different than the capacity to deliver service through time. They're not the same equation. Now, there are those in the middle ground that can operate at scale with quality. Complex, hard to do, because a lot of the perceived quality in the industry is around customer experience and relationships and nurture and hair stroking and love and all those different things. So I don't believe necessarily that regulation will affect fees. Why should it? Because there's always going to be someone that goes, hey, look, everyone's charging 2% now. I'm going in at half, and I'll do 3 times.
The question I was trying to ask you was, maybe I didn't phrase it correctly, is that if we are in an industry where we can no longer charge withdrawal fees and we can no longer have the courage to charge upfront marketing fees, and yet we're still carrying the cost of marketing, and there is a cost to us if a property is withdrawn, how do we shift closer to that Australian model where sellers gladly or willingly pay marketing budgets because they understand that they get the higher
of what we do?
They haven't. I tell you what, I was going to bring this up anyway, but they haven't had that same race to the bottom that clearly we did. When all the financial services companies were just throwing money at it for mortgages and everything else, and the fees just were almost immaterial.
Purple bricks pretty much came and went overnight over there.
Genuinely, I don't want to say this. They were so overconfident or correctly confident, rather, the Aussie agents, that it was going to fall on its arse. I was like, oh, well, let's see. I've got a theory that human nature actually does deviate, or a good percentage of it, towards the cheapest, even though you don't like to be seen as the cheapest. But you know what they did, which we didn't do over here and haven't done, is they would literally, competitors who ordinarily hate each other, let's call them high street competitors, but they would literally say, look, I really don't care if you go with me, but do not go with these online agents. They were absolutely adamant that to do the service that you require, Mr. Vendor, requires this level of service. And really, it's just a choice between whether you think we're the right.
I think that also happened here to a certain extent, Wiley.
What? They did
that. I mean, if you remember, I don't know if you recall the Move Nation proposition, which was that the traditional high street agents could adopt an online plan B, second alternative offering, to be able to differentiate in front of the customer and say, here's the good stuff, and then here's
I actually think you're both correct, and I think this that we're doing today, this whole talking shop that our industry has become, and the fact that we are now having conversations in the open, and we seem to be collaborating a lot better as a whole than we ever used to. I think we were forced into that because we all had a perceived threat of that race to the bottom. We decided the way to get over it was to somehow get together, share our best ideas, and raise standards. Or am I being over romantic?
No, I agree. I think also, one of the things that's happening alongside this
he's
revolution is digitization.
Yeah.
And if you think about, if you actually look at an agency business, you see these sort of memes of what they saw, what it was type thing. And what the customer sees is a pretty picture on Rightmove. So they're like, well, I'm going to pay you, what, 5 grand, 10 grand, 50 grand to stick a pretty picture on Rightmove? do that myself, really. I can get my iPhone out, take a photo. So, what actually goes on in the background, I guess that analogy is the swan, the pretty thing on top and the legs going like mad underneath, is the whole operational scale, complexity of delivering a number of new instructions, marketing them, organizing viewings, all the feedback that goes on, whether that's between buyer seller or whether it's just that direct vendor relationship piece. You've then got, God forbid, something actually gets sold, and you've got to then take it through to completion through the sales progression process, which is another, I don't know what you call it. It's a nightmare. Digitization is starting, or I'm going to say starting actually, even though that's probably contentious, to remove a lot of the complexity that used to exist in agency business. A lot of that frenetic activity is now delivered through automated processes, interactions, cross-collaboration between different platforms. It's nowhere near where it needs to be. And I think it's a long way left, because I don't think the industry is necessarily buying into it adequately, but that's by the by. But I think that element is allowing agents to start to focus more on perhaps the bit that you're talking about, which is the true skills of agency. And some of those are service, I think. Some of those are very, very professional in terms of adherence to law, because there is one. That adherence to that unwritten code of customer service, of how you should deliver value to a client and how you should take care of them. That multidimensional client base where, if you go back 25 years, agents had one client. That was the person paying their bill. Now they actually consider buyers as clients. And I think that, I personally am very pro-regulation. I think it's really important because there is a law that governs how you operate. Therefore, you ought to understand it, and you ought to be able to prove that you can understand it. There is a methodology that assures delivering quality and value, and you should be well trained on observing and following that methodology. Now, I guess it's different in different agencies, secret sauce, but there is an underlying journey between a person thinking they may sell their property and a person getting a load of money in their bank or having a load taken out of their bank. So yeah, I don't know really where we're going with it. The Aussie model, I think the Aussie model, Whaley, comes down to value proposition, and I think that's something that perhaps estate agency hasn't been exceptional at. Is as you sit on that sofa, before you open your mouth, does the consumer get the value of what it is you're about to talk about? Yeah. And I don't think so.
And I think that's one of the things actually the online agents do actually probably need, not that anyone will give them thanks, but it did force agents to actually make the invisible visible and highlight exactly what they do to justify their fee. And the best ones have done that fantastically well.
Yeah, I think that the other thing these onliners brought to the marketplace was a degree of impetus around change towards perceived digitization, and that's not necessarily at a transactional level, because I don't personally believe that's really going on fast enough, but at a front end of the UI and a CX level. The customer at the time was shopping on Amazon, was doing most of their daily activity through an Apple or Android device. And so this analog industry now competing with what was perceived as a technical, online, webified, contemporary option, I think created a dramatic change in the industry, and the impetus for agents to start to focus on their user experience and how you could interact, rather than park the car, put £1 in the machine, walk down the road, come in a door, sit in a chair, wait for the person to be available, be offered some coffee that probably is of a lesser flavour than that's free in the leisure centre. I think that whole online thing talked directly to where consumers were at that time and what they wanted.
And you touched on before the conveyancing process being a nightmare part of our industry in terms of what we've got.
Did I use the word? I hope I didn't, but okay.
No, you didn't use the word nightmare. I'm paraphrasing perhaps. Yeah. Forgive me, but you clearly stated that conveyancing was a nightmare. Now, part of my issue with conveyancing is that I think there's a degree of mysticism.
Can I just before we fall down this rabbit hole?
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily convinced that conveyancing is a nightmare. I think the ecosystem between those selling, marketing, managing the vendor relationships around property and those doing the legal activity that leads to its eventual completion, I think that is what is, oh, Heather, love you, thank you. I think that is what is complex. I think it's not fair to say that either side of that or either party of that ecosystem is not doing its job beautifully well. I think conveyancers...
I'm not suggesting that for a second. What I'm suggesting is I think there's a degree of mysticism over what it is that the conveyancers do during that process. Certainly to their clients, it's not often entirely clear where the value is and how hard the conveyancer is working. And very often that doesn't translate very well with the agents either. The agents have got better at trying to sort of communicate to the public where in the chain and where in that progression they add value.
Do you not think that's the problem, though, that they have to communicate it, that there isn't this transactional transparency where everybody involved in everything can see what's going on, to the point where the amount of telephone calls and emails, and if they've moved to omni-channel comms, which I hope many have, WhatsApp, SMS, that people are having about where's this thing at? What is going on? Has the buyer done? Has the seller done? It's such a furball that needs to just be coughed out, because it's every time you have to ask a question, the agent lost a tick from its customer service review box. Because if either any client in the process has to ask the question, they've triggered that thing. And so many agents are proactive. Don't ever let the client have to ask. Phone them every day, every hour, whatever it takes. You look at some of the Aussie model, you listen to Josh Fegan in terms of his principles around those relationships. They're absolute. You have to keep that constant contact. But I think that's the piece that perhaps isn't beautiful enough, is that people get fraught and they get anxious and it's stressful. And it's stressful beyond money in the bank. It's kids moving school, grown-ups moving jobs. Someone died, someone got divorced. Someone isn't dead yet, but will be. All these horrible anxious complexities that come into actually moving house are made or worsened or heightened by the fact that the transparency isn't there.
So then when you throw in a bag of tricks and you do get digitization going properly, and you're about to tell us hopefully a little bit more about how AI plays into all of this. I understand there's that argument that AI shouldn't be seen as a threat by agents because it will free them up to do the human side of our business and get more involved. However, as with every sort of digitized process, when the life of the agent becomes easier because they're able to deliver demonstrable value proposition to a client using digitized processes. Does the client actually assume that, hang on, my agent uses all these tricks and therefore isn't working as hard?
I don't know. Do I, when I buy something from Amazon, say, my goodness me, they're so lazy versus the retail shopkeeper on the high street who has to go and fetch my size of shoe from the cupboard and open the box and spread the laces so I could try it on? I don't know. I think the problem actually is the other way around, that our expectation is moving faster than the execution of change. Therefore, I think what you've got is this concept of taking things for granted. And therefore, I think things are notable by their absence, not by their presence. I think people probably these days are so used to, and a great example is maybe your online banking. Things that 20 years ago, I don't know, were something you had to physically do and was hugely time consuming and quite a lot annoying, now happens borderline instantaneously. That's what we've gotten used to. So anything that isn't like that is like, well, hang on. Why isn't that like that? But it should be. That's crap.
You judge things regardless of within the industry. You judge things by how Uber and you know, and Just Eat and things like that. That immediacy, and so you might be held up to an unfair standard, but that's how the public are unfortunately viewing everybody, aren't they?
I think that, you know, if we're looking to champion customer experience, and let's use that as a broad description for lots of different things, then it should be ever present in the decision making of where we're going tomorrow. What are we doing? And that customer experience is being changed by not necessarily competitors, although they are a part of that mix, but it's being changed by the world in which we live. You know, you look. I mean, a great example is cars. Now, you know, what we expect from a vehicle versus what we expected a while ago in terms of, you know, perhaps to quote, I guess it's Monty Python, machines that go bing. You know, we get in a car now, and if it hasn't got all these special things, we think it's crap, don't we? It's like, well, this isn't a good car. It hasn't got a telly or whatever is in a car. And I think people are just moving really, really quickly.
One of the people there demonstrating he's been in a real car recently, a telly.
Do you know, interesting, I've probably been caught out.
Got a microwave and an air fryer.
I have a lot of people telling me how shit my Nissan is.
That attention span issue is a real problem, though, isn't it, Kristian? Because as you said, everything's so far. Very good. Everything's so fast moving these days. You know, to portray some quite complex ideas, you know, succinctly is an amazing challenge for many different sorts of business.
Yeah, and I suppose maybe we try too hard to do that rather than just letting it be and happen. You know, you were talking about Repeat, and there are other CRMs available. When we first put the Repeat portal, no one used it.
Yeah.
You know, and then when they started using it, they'd phone and talk about it. It's like, well, we've got twice as much work now.
It's interesting what you said there, though, Stotty. So you said before it was 20 years ago. My recollection is it was only 10 years ago when I was going out there talking about this fantastic, you know, landlord portal, vendor portal that people could use. And well, actually, you know, the public aren't going to embrace it. You know, it's you know, the security concerns. We're a people business. We want to update people. And actually, as you said, the minute that every high street bank actually disappeared and everyone was doing it via there, changed the whole scene. And that first wave of early adopters who might have given it up, you know, for fear of being seen as a purple brick style business or online agent, suddenly rush back to it, realizing, oh no, this was the right decision. It was just the wrong time.
I think also, Simon, what has probably happened is the consumer has become more empowered and subsequently perhaps more entitled. And I think we want what we want, when we want it, exactly how we want it. And we aren't necessarily going to tell you what that is. So this multidimensional sort of perspective or interaction, you know, we're talking now about estate agency, which is a great context for this conversation. I might want to phone you up. I might want to email you. I might want to WhatsApp. I might want to DIY by logging into something and reading or looking at something. And every single one of those expectations should be met without friction whenever I want it to be met. And that is in itself a really big challenge. This nervous system that has to operate within the business, which is a complex collection of digitizations, baselines of analog, I guess, computing and people. It's all got to work together really nicely so that the customer never feels that it's compartmentalized or detached in any way. It should just be this seamless, frictionless experience across any interaction point, whether I walk into a branch or I phone up or whatever I want to do. It should just feel normal. Yeah. Not stretched, not forced, just normal. And, you know, there are businesses who have decided, you know, I don't know anyone's name at Amazon apart from Jeff. And I don't think I've ever talked to anyone at Amazon. Definitely not Jeff.
But the service is
phone. So they've picked that route. And I guess some people get to go to an Amazon shop, so maybe their experience is different from mine. But they've picked that route. They've said it's entirely digitized. There is no human, apart from the bloke who throws it over my gate into a puddle and drives off in his van. It's entirely digitized. Sorry, Amazon. That probably amounted to a complaint. I didn't mean it. The agency doesn't have that choice yet because, Amazon don't come and sit on my sofa and ask me which egg cup collection 6 I would like. So, agents have still got that interaction, that human interaction of sitting on a sofa, agreeing strategy.
But you mentioned that point about it not being forced and it being natural. I think to go back to the human side of it, whilst this isn't part of the digitized process, I think the agents that you see that are winning awards for customer service, that are meant to be the best of the best, they are more natural with their customers. It doesn't feel like that old-fashioned, I'm a shopkeeper and I'm wearing the shopkeeper's coat and you've walked in. Do you know what I mean? There's parity, a little bit more between us and our customers, and we are part of it. We're two parties, partners, if you like, trying to solve a puzzle of how we get them moved. And I think that feels a lot more. If you can get that right, I think that's some. And
I think what's common with a lot of them, and what I don't know is, if you measured every agent in the UK by its P&L and its EBIT, would you get a different story versus this award-winning?
Yeah, you're right.
Rather different. What I would say is that of pretty much every award winner, there's always something effervescent about them. There's always something really nice. And I think for me, that probably is the front end of what consumers directly feel and touch and cuddle. That nice, that effervescence. What I think is perhaps part of our conversation now is foundationally what underpins that. Now, you could say, well, what underpins that is great people, human capital, the most amazing in the business. But also, if you look at automation in particular, and I suppose where AI is taking us, and not just AI, but that sort of digital collaboration across multiple platforms, all looking to achieve the same end, which in estate agency is people moving home. When that starts to play its part as well, those best of the best just get better because they've got more time and less overhead. And it is their instinct to spend that time on their customers. So rather than, I've digitized my customer onboarding process, so let's hit the golf course. I've digitized my customer onboarding process. Let me now phone all these customers or go and see them at home or go and have a coffee with them or whatever, to keep them more and more engaged, not just with my business and my service, but with the journey they're on and the process they're going through, because they are invariably painful. You could say maybe if you use other methods of sale, like an auction, 56 days or 28 days, depending what type of product it is, it's less painful than a private treaty sale. You could probably get away with a bit less customer interaction because there's less hair stroking and hand holding from beginning to end, cradle to grave. But realistically, moving house, whichever end of the stick you're at, isn't very nice.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, even just physically in that process of getting all your stuff from one place to another. It's a traumatic experience for many.
Yeah, and you've got to pay a lot of money for it if you're depending how the fee arrives. It's not a cheap thing to do.
Stotty,
unless you use perhaps some of those cheap choices.
I'm Stotty. I'm very conscious. We are as usual chewing the cud, and we're all over halfway through. Mincy's just put up the banner at the bottom there.
Thank you.
We're going to come back to some of the people you respect within the industry, those suppliers again that you have time for, and everything else there. But can we just deal with the main reason you were coming on the show here today? Because you're doing
apart from spending time with David and yourself, of course.
And thanks for reading that out, as we always ask all of our guests to do. Could you just talk us through what you're doing and obviously why you're doing it? I think that'd be really good to frame it.
Okay, I'm going to go on a bike ride.
Is that it? Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And I'd like people to support me in doing that. And there is a reason. The cause I am riding my bicycle for is the Doddy Weir My Name's Doddy Foundation. Many people won't remember Doddy Weir. Many will. And he was an international superstar of Scottish rugby, not necessarily my colours, but that's by the by, who was diagnosed with motor neuron disease in 2017, and it subsequently put his light out, so to speak. And if having learned a lot about motor neuron disease, it's a nasty piece of work.
It's horrible,
and
isn't it?
It's coming for some of us, and it's desperately underfunded, and there is no cure. And I would like to do a small bit in changing that, and I would really appreciate the support of others in doing so. We're riding from Edinburgh to Rome. I'm not doing that on my own. I'm doing it as part of a team of people. It's a big ride on your own. I mean, there is actually a couple of people who are doing it solo.
Doing the whole thing. Going all
they
the
are. Yeah.
Is there an option if somebody wanted to join and they weren't sort of a true athlete? Could they start from just maybe outside Rome, not Edinburgh?
Absolutely. You can start where you want.
I think what he's digging for, Stotty, he wants a flight to Rome, and then he's going to hire a bike.
So he's going to ride from Cheadle to Manchester Airport.
That's it. That's it. He knows.
So yes, the charity is it's the My Name's Doddy Foundation, which supports the Motor Neuron Disease Association and MND Scotland. It's about raising money to try to find ways to tackle MND, of which there are really none. Very few is probably the best description.
And you were saying there, it's one of these ones that's underfunded, is it? Is it
desperately? Yeah.
I mean, that's quite interesting. I mean, unfortunately, you get this stage of your life where you've gone through fancy free and everything else, and then all of a sudden you find friends, family being diagnosed with these neurodegenerative. Famously, our friend, you've been on many times, Ben Subiani with Huntington's. We had Ben G on the other day as well with them there. This family of horribly cruel disease. And just to put it into context again, you mentioned he wasn't your flavour of rugby player, but he was absolutely a specimen of sporting prowess, wasn't it? And it was almost like doubly cruel. It's horrific anyway, but to have somebody like him and see the journey that he went through and everything else is genuinely shocking. Yeah. I mean, it is true. I think that there's always hope on the horizon, but it just takes so long to get this stuff through with the amount of funding that they need, doesn't it?
100%. And you're seeing at the moment a number of, I suppose, high-profile sports people who are being impacted by these things. Yeah. So, it could well be there was a link, in particular with contact sport, potentially. I don't know. Joos van der Westhuizen was obviously a very high profile one, but what I found really interesting is I took on this challenge essentially to be a part of a group of people doing something. What has happened since I did that is the amount of people through fundraising who have directly reached out to me and said, I am directly affected by this. And I didn't know that. And I've been really quite surprised at how close it is to me without me ever knowing it was there. And often it's because it's sort of my father. So when people my age talk about their father, you're talking people in their minimum sort of 70s. So they're not people I really see much of, if that makes sense. Yeah. However, I suppose conversely, one of the guys who is local to me where I live is mid-30s.
Shocking.
And in 5 months, his life has been utterly transformed from active, able-bodied to being 100% wheelchair bound. That's 5 months worth. And I think that's the bit that perhaps I hadn't recognised is it's quite common, I suppose. You just don't see it.
Yeah, it's shocking. And it was interesting you talking there. I remember Dom was saying that's one of those ones where it's unfortunate. It's literally a flip of a coin whether it's actually passed down as well. Yeah. And actually, when his father had it, they couldn't even diagnose it. It was kind of like he's just got the palsy or something like that. It's just very, very generic, isn't it? I mean, obviously the diagnosis is fantastic these days, largely, but the treatment obviously is just so tough.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think with motor neuron, there's a big focus on stem cell research.
Yeah,
which is quite a contemporary science, but also is not cheap.
No, it offers up great potential, doesn't it? But as I said, well, it goes without saying, everyone that can possibly please back it. I know there's always a huge demand on obviously your time and your resources with this, but I think it's an absolutely fantastic cause to do, and you're putting yourself out there to do it, aren't you?
It's a very sore bottom.
I was going to say, are you prepared for the chafage, or that's how most of our conversations end, actually?
I don't know if there is a way to prepare for such a thing, if I'm honest with you. We're
going to need a bigger seat.
Yeah, well, or a smaller one. I think perching oneself, it's disguised well by the camera, but, there's quite a lot of me. So to
how proficient are you as a cyclist? Is it something that you do a fair bit of, or is this going to be a world of pain?
I would be a better cyclist if I lived in Holland.
I'd eat more raw fish if I lived in Japan.
I don't enjoy hills as much as those.
No, I love cycling. As you said, hills are just did you ever remember the story when I did it for Agents Giving? David said,
would you have a Marmite jumper or something?
I had a Marmite one just to address the elephant in the room or the whale in the room. And Sean Newman and John Cook fantastically did it around the whole of Britain or whatever it was. I literally planned the flattest route, literally did loads of research. And I thought I hadn't been on a bike literally since I was a kid, putting paid to the you never forget how to ride. But when we turned up the night before, it turned out that John and Sean were so bored of doing all these flat ones that they said, we're going to change the course tomorrow, which involved this, as far as I was concerned, this Everest and literally I had to get a lift up in the back of a van because it was so hard. They are, when you're on that bike looking up at those hills, it's tough, isn't it?
And what I think is I suppose fabulous about a bicycle is it completely changes what a hill is. To many of us, walking or in a car, a hill's like that. On a bicycle, hills sort of start there, really. Yeah. The most gentle incline, once you've been on it long enough, can get you puffing and blowing. So a great friend of mine said his piece of advice was to gain lightness. Have
you thought about maybe taking a leaf out of the Lance Armstrong book, because there is help you can
I think Lance was one of those.
Come see me if you do.
Yeah, but Lance was one of those people that what was in the box evidently was less lovely than the wrapping paper surrounding it, and I think he.
A very eloquent way of putting it.
He broke a lot of hearts.
Tell us about Oscar Pistorius, please.
I think that's just down to a stenographer, and I didn't it? I don't bloody know, do I? I wasn't going for a wee that evening, so I don't know if he was hidden behind the door with a shooter.
Okay. So Stotty, when's this happening again? Just let everyone know.
I leave on Thursday next week.
Oh, cool.
And we arrive in Rome the following Friday.
Wow. Well, what's the weather like? Is it decent this time of year, or
I would like everybody to do two things. One is to donate.
Yeah.
And two is to do a little dance, a little sunshine dance. Because if it rains, it's gonna, that whole sort of wet bum, sore bum. I'd like
cycling, hills, and rain. I mean, that's the holy trinity of pain, isn't it?
Isn't it just? Yeah. So we have Ben Weir, Doddie's youngest son, on our team, and he hopefully you will see him. Six Nations, Scotland versus Italy. Hopefully, you will see him walk out onto the pitch and present the match ball. So that's our challenge. Not only do we have to ride to Rome, but we have to do that within the time frame. Otherwise, we spoil the telly.
God, you've set yourself right up there, haven't you?
Yeah. So this is your very own Italian job. Are you trying to pull off?
I suppose. Although they were trying to get out of Milan, wasn't it? Was it Milan, Turin? I don't know. We're trying to get in, but yes, similar.
Okay. Right. Well, that's absolutely fantastic. Encourage everyone to back Stotty, and obviously just amazing and well done for doing it.
Thank
Stotty.
you.
Let's just drag you back to the world of property, and we like to find out from everybody who they respect within the industry. Can be past as well, past, present, and everything else. Do you have anyone that jumps immediately to mind and the reason why?
A massive list.
Good. Well, we love to tag people, so knock yourself out.
and if it makes it easier, you can leave me and Whaley off this list, because I think people take that for granted.
Well, thank you. That cuts it in half. I don't know where to start. Do you have a preference in terms of agents, suppliers? Do you want me to pick one? I'll tell you
what. Give us one of your earliest ones. So one of the formative people that
90.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I know. He's new to the industry, isn't he? This.
Yeah. But he's making waves. No, I think Peter Knight has.
Why? Why is a matter of interest? I mean, obviously, I think many of us know, but what was it in particular that caught your attention, and why did you? Yeah.
He's authoritative. He's innovative, and he takes time to bring the perspective right to you as a person. He can obviously announce to a room full of 12 billion people, but he can come and he can pick out that nuanced element that is what needs to be delivered to your mindset. So he's always been someone that I've
I think that's interesting there. One of the things I've always thought about Peter is I love his ability to take ideas from outside of industry and make them industry specific. I think that's a genuine, just such a magical skill to be able to have there and not be afraid to do that. I think famously we get very goldfish bowl about the ideas that you're obviously AI is a huge one here. If you were just to look at what we're doing in property, you'd probably be a bit underwhelmed. If you look at what's going on in other industries, my God, that the potential is amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. Couple of agents, maybe, if we chuck in. 3 agents.
Because don't worry, mate, we're coming to suppliers in a minute. We're going to make you sing for your supper. So yeah, a couple of agents.
I don't know if I want to do this.
Yes, you do. You have to. Or we're gonna. Or I'm going to say, don't donate to his charity. We're going to edit that. Oh no, it's going live, isn't it? Okay, fine. No. Yeah, a couple of agents, please.
Mark Manning.
The man.
I think Mark has quality at scale. I think he is firmly in that place which is delivering value across that sort of bigger business. I'm going to make him blush now, but I think Matt Nichols built a great business.
Amazing,
underpinned by service and that being interstitial between community and people as a provider.
He's doing that amazingly well, isn't he? He really does.
Fabulous. I don't know if you know Dan Lewis. So he runs a business called freeagent247.com, and I was lucky enough to do a bit of work with them a while ago. So what they've done is they've taken the best of, I suppose, auction, buyer's premium, buyer pays the bill, but built that around a vendor-led service culture. So it's the vendor show, but they're flipping the fees over to the buyer. So it's a nice model, and he's building a good business, sadly. And you will remember Gerard Smith, actually, from working with Andrew Grant. He was headed up Country Home. So he died this week. He was Dan's business partner. Simon Bradbury. I think he brought such amazing character with everything he did.
I think characters, if you had to choose one word in those word clouds, character just comes through time and time again, isn't it? He really, unique is often overused, but there is only one Simon Bradbury.
Yeah. I think that will do, will it not?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, no, it's good. And flipping that round, so obviously the people that make this industry what it is, the suppliers. So, who are the ones that that have impressed you? Obviously, that are. Could you? Okay, come on.
I think for me, and I'm not necessarily going gosh, I've got to be careful on terminology. I'm not going to bother with terminology. I personally believe that a ubiquitous transactional platform underpinned by a blockchain would be advantageous to the industry widespread.
It just needs that critical mass, doesn't it? I think that then suddenly becomes.
And I'm not sure anyone's going to achieve that. And you may say from a competitivity and innovation and design perspective that maybe it is disadvantageous to have a ubiquitous platform. But I think if any part of the industry is moving in that direction, I think the guys at Kajuta and they've got that sort of tripartite holy trinity of banking, finance, land registry, and the TR process, and then the industry per se, which is lending, legal, agency, marketing, customer interaction. So I think that the direction they're taking as a business is marvelous. I think I would like, rather than name names, or I suppose there's some contenders in the CRM space who have decided to sort of swing a tiger by its tail. And I think, the guys at Loop, Rex, Street in particular, I think are doing great jobs. It's suddenly
become very interesting, hasn't it? From what was quite an established, not much seemingly on the horizon, these new challengers are really mixing it up, aren't they, with the traditional powerhouses like Reaper?
Yeah, and I think sometimes what you can end up with is a sort of a small innovation spark lighting the fire of a bigger, more established player and allowing them to sort of, learn fast and use big pockets to change fast. But equally, what you can see is market shift and businesses gaining rapid traction where they're delivering innovation beyond that of those well entrenched and established players. And I think there are businesses out there that are doing that. And whatever the end outcome, whether it's them becoming the sort of the big fish, or whether we create a much more fragmented supplier industry around that type of product, I guess it doesn't really matter. It's great to see people doing it, and some of the product there, it's beautiful.
Okay,
it is beautiful, but it's easy to use, but it also looks a lot better than we previously used to accept. I don't want to name any of them in particular.
Oh, go on.
When it comes to CRMs, they were not beautiful to use, but they were sold to us on stability. So it's functional. This is going to work, but don't expect it to look good. And a lot of us dismissed how much user experience actually along the way when it came to software was important. But I think the best iterations of that, and you mentioned Street before, it not only gives the agent a better user experience, but it also translates all the way down to their clients, because they get to see that beauty of the software as well, because they're using it.
And we keep talking about, obviously, all the potential of AI and everything else. And literally, if you don't have somebody using the CRM system, the source of truth anyway, you're not going to have the data you need in there for the AI to use effectively, are you? And even on a more basic level, for management information, for referrals, for integration. So it absolutely is a vital part of it. Has to be part of that kit bag, doesn't it, for any CRM?
Kristian, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that, if you look at AI, AI hasn't really started yet. What we have is this sort of widespread consumption of language model output to do things that previously we could do on our own, but it took a very long time and a lot of effort. So, content creation, planning, things like that, we're using language models to do it. We've kind of got this battle of the language models at the moment, which is a healthy thing. We're seeing different providers launch different chat-powered engines. When AI really gets its claws in is the point at which AI can both create and execute. And that's the gap right now, is the execution piece. Now, we were talking earlier about the fact that people are building stuff into software, which will almost take an AI thing, an output, and execute it and make it do something. And that is when things are going to become very special. And if you look down the line, these, I guess, whenever you talk about robot, you think about one of these big arms welding a Volkswagen. And it's not really that we're talking about. When we start to see what we'll describe as robotics, although I think it's a poor description, once AI can command robotics and execute, all of a sudden then you will be able to deliver widespread efficiency over so many layers of what you do. And I think preparing for that are businesses, in particular the SaaS space or software space that we're talking about, who have that long-term vision around, I think, and you will have seen this when people first started talking about AI, that, hey, it could write brochures.
Yeah.
Then there was a full stop there.
It was all about content, wasn't it? It was all about content.
And I could do my social media campaigns and things like that. And that's great, but actually, take cognitive pieces, analyzing inbound information, whether that's call transcripts, whether that's documents, and doing stuff with them. This whole process of moving human in the loop. How many humans do you need in the loop? At the moment, we're saying, and you hear these things like, it's a bit like listening to Farage, isn't it? AI is coming for our jobs. And I think what it's doing is AI is coming to liberate our jobs. It's coming to take away misspent human energy.
Well, it's what Elon Musk said, do what you want to do, not the things you need to do.
It's also going to change the outcomes for a lot of, for instance, the way that AI is perhaps able to analyze data from property management situations at scale. So you talk about housing associations, for instance, looking at their data and how they can deliver better services to tenants. I think that will come to us in the private sector as well, and allow us.
It's already there. I think the question is, you have the vision. You're going to have this, I suppose, dual aspect to it. The first is having individual vision to augment your proposition and service by looking at things you spend time and energy and effort and therefore money on, and transforming them into AI processes. The other side of that is where software companies phone you up and say, by the way, that thing you used to do all day for £8 a month, I can do it for you. And what you've got there is you're going to get widespread normalization of that process. It will no longer be a process because it will be foundationally carried out in the background. It won't exist anymore in people's mindset is happening.
I think it's amazing. And just to take you back as far from AI as possible, but obviously you've been our sister company is Relocation Agent Network, and you've obviously been both a member. How important in this day and age do you think it is to be a member? I mean, there are obviously other networks, there's the fantastic Guild Fear and things like that. Do you think that in this depersonalized digital age I've got a theory that actually it's more important than ever to be a member of a network like that? Or not?
No, I was just taking time to sort of think that through. I think membership is important in many ways, and I think what I would say is I think the proposition around membership has been augmented recently or changed recently by digitization. I think the older value of network has been removed by Tinterweb and things like that. But I think the new or perhaps the old value of network is that collaborative piece where, the power of many, isn't it? Everybody benefits, whether that's from communicating, whether it's from sharing the load of service, whether it's from sharing the load of cost and innovation, all of those different things. The burden of innovation on agents, I think, is huge because differentiation is challenging these days. And we were talking earlier about fees, but if you think about it, whilst no one really wants to talk about it, the elephant in the room is that fees are a differentiator. Well, that's shocking. When you differentiate on price, what happened to value? And I think being part of networks is really important in maintaining a value proposition, learning from each other, guiding each other, and also potentially substantiating through that collectiveness greater value to the customer, which differentiates.
Mate, honestly, we could go on for 3 hours here, as we always do over a pint, but I want to say thank you so much for your time today. Reach out to Kristian on anything AI related. He's up there with the very, very best out there as well. Most importantly, get that chamois leather and all of the lubricants or whatever it is to do it, and hope everyone gets behind it. We'll keep knocking it out there, and obviously look forward to catching up with you when you get back.
Guys, thank you for talking about the charity cause. That was really good of you. And it probably isn't going to be fun. But I hope
that's the bit I'm enjoying the most, to be honest.
I thought you might, and I think it's worth paying for.
Yeah. Well, obviously, I will donate once you chase me down.
Right on you, mate.
Thank you so much. Really love to see you both.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you, Heather.